Hey, what's up, expats and travelers alike? This is Josh with Expats Everywhere, and I just sat down and had a really honest and straightforward interview with Andrew Henderson, the Nomad Capitalist. We sat down and talked about how he started his business, how his company can help you or your company, and some really helpful tips on being an expat. Sit back and enjoy. Hello and welcome to Expats Everywhere. If you could tell us your name, where you're from, and a little about what you do.
I'm Andrew Henderson. I am the founder of Nomad Capitalist, and I originally came from Ohio in the U.S. I say that if you're from the U.S., you know that the only acceptable answer to "I'm from Cleveland" is "I'm sorry to hear that." And for the last 10 to 12 years, I've been studying, researching, and doing a plan of total internationalization, where I have my finances, my residences, my passports, my investments diversified all over the world, and now help people do the same.
That's awesome. And have you been an expat before? And if you have, where have you been an expat?
Well, this is an interesting question. That, what is an expat? What counts as living is somewhere? It's funny. I was just talking to someone the other day. He's like, 1 month counts as living, and some people say 6 months counts as living. The lines are becoming blurred. I started out about a decade ago with the U.S. base. I was still in the U.S. and was just basically out of the U.S. for a good chunk of the time, traveling to all kinds of different places, very nomadic. And then I became fully nomadic and just lived out of a suitcase. Then I built a base. Then I changed the base. Then, so I've lived in different places, but it's never been like one place, wake up every morning. There's always been some level of, in March, let's go to Montenegro kind of thing. But I've lived in Montenegro, I've lived in Tbilisi, Georgia, the country of Georgia, Malaysia, spent a decent amount of time in Vietnam. You lose track after a while.
And what kind of work have you done in those countries?
What I've really done, it first started, I was running businesses in the U.S. I remember in 2005, back when VoIP, remember this stuff, the voice over internet, the Vonage phone, if you're from the U.S., where you could make calls from anywhere. You just plugged it into your router and you made phone calls. And I said, I had a brand new business in the U.S., but I said I could do this anywhere. And I didn't for a couple of years, but eventually I just kept running the U.S. businesses. We had a business in the broadcast industry, and then eventually I had other businesses that I invested in the U.S. And so those were being run while I was bouncing all around the world. And now with Nomad Capitalist, everything's entirely digital. So I've never gone to Mexico and started a business, or gone to Malaysia and started a business. For me, when we talk about a Nomad Capitalist, is the idea of separating everything. So if you live in Malaysia, for example, as I do part of the time, that's all you're going to do. You're going to live there. And maybe you have some banking there to facilitate your being allowed to live there on a full-time basis. But that's what you do. And then the business is somewhere else. So, our company is in one place. We've actually got a couple different companies in different countries, none of which I live in or really spend much time in. I bank in other places. And I live in places that are just for living, and they welcome me as a guest, but I'm not doing anything on the ground there. I think that's what's very interesting about this whole, what I call nomad capitalism, is you can basically go to the buffet and cherry pick the best things of everything. To where you no longer have to do what my parents wanted to do in the mid-90s, which is let's just take what we have in the U.S. and move to New Zealand and just transplant it. Now you can just cherry pick, live where you want, do business where you want, do business in the cloud. I think that's the best way.
So tell us, how and why did you start the Nomad Capitalist?
Back in 2012, came back to the U.S. for a short while, was meeting with a friend or two, and I said, I've been researching and slowly creeping in for a couple years into this internationalization stuff. I'd like to do it full time. I was in the process of selling my last U.S. business, and I said in a couple months that deal will be closed, and I'm going to do this full time, live in a suitcase and study, where can I put this money that I've made, and what are the new opportunities I can take part in. And I said, maybe I'll be interviewed every once in a while. Let me make myself one of these kind of media creatures. And I said, I need a name. I'm just thinking like Sojourner, whatever, like Nomad. Okay, Nomad Capitalist. I like that. And so I set up this website, and I just started as I was trekking around the world with a suitcase, blogging about some political thoughts, more political early on, as well as kind of here's what I'm seeing, here's countries I like, here's countries I don't like. And it became popular. I just I think because I just was doing it every day, I was putting out content every day, eventually it became more and more popular to where we were getting like hundreds of thousands of people a month that were coming and looking at our stuff. And I said, let me make this into a business. And so now it's evolved over the years. The first thing we did was we hosted an event with Peter Schiff in Las Vegas, where we just got a bunch of people from the U.S. to come and learn kind of what I was learning, and that went pretty well. So we did a few more. Then we were putting out books and guides. But then I realized people who come to events, people who buy books and guides, rarely do anything. They rarely get action. I'm a very action-oriented person, probably almost too much. And so we shifted into just helping people do this stuff, helping people solve these very complicated problems of how do I legally reduce my tax going overseas? How do I legally get immigration status in different countries, get second passports, get insurance policies, protect myself, protect my money, make investments? There's a lot going on there, and it's a lot more complicated than people think. So I said, let's just do that for people. Rather than doing all the books and the events, let's just help people. And so we built a great team now of, I guess, about 15 people helping people do that.
That's brilliant. So those are some of the services that you offer. Could you explain some of the other things that you do?
I think the number one thing that I do, and really the most fun thing for me, this was the one business, I don't know what number business this is, I kind of forget. This was the one that was never really supposed to be a business. That's kind of my success secret, by the way. I kind of fell into it. It was the cleanest thing in my business life, my business career, where it was just like, I'm putting out value and people asking for things, and I'm like, sure, I can help you. Here's what it'll cost. And so the biggest thing for me of what I do is I'm doing it myself. I am fascinated with getting residence permits and getting passports. I was just, I've got a full-time R&D team who's just constantly fighting with lawyers in random countries and flying there and talking to guys who won't answer the phone or respond to emails. And it's like, oh, there's a permanent residence program in Haiti. Where do I go and do that? I'm doing it more than anybody needs to because it fascinates me. I love going and opening bank accounts. I love moving money around and just building this ultimate fortress of financial and personal freedom. And so I think that because I love it so much, it's easy to help people do the same thing. Nobody needs 25 bank accounts as I have. But by doing that, it's easier to help people from personal experience. And I think that that's one area that as a business person, I've learned in all the years of doing this. Bankers, tax guys, a lot of people, hotels, a lot of people deal in prevarication. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 19. I've never really had a job. I've never worked in a cubicle. And so to me, all the corporate, pleasantries, it's not my thing. And I think a lot of business owners are frustrated dealing with the corporate pleasantries when they try and go into this offshore world of all of the very diplomatic people who have their own little niches carved out. And so I think that the biggest thing I've done is help cut through that clutter and help people just get the result rather than get a report. You don't want to get a report on how to lower your taxes. You just want to put it in place and just go sit by the pool and relax 100%. And just enjoy the rest of your money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What kind of interactions do you have with expats now, and how often?
It's funny because I have a couple homes around the world, and I'm actively kind of building up that network of homes as I focus more on someone who quote-unquote lives in different places rather than being nomadic. Let's talk about Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I've got friends who are expats who are from Egypt, who are from the US, who are from the UK, from Russia, from all over the world. And so in each place, I guess I have different friends. Some countries I have more local friends. If you go to Georgia, there aren't as many expats there. Most of them are kind of NGO or embassy workers, people that I just, a business owner wouldn't really be into. But I have some friends, New Zealand and US and Canada and the UK there as well. So, yeah, I think that's the fascinating thing about this. But for me, what I like to do, I don't like things to get too stagnant. We were talking about how a couple years ago I was on 4 continents in 28 days. Flew probably 30,000 miles in about 4 weeks. I'm not doing that anymore. To be more settled. But I don't like to be so stagnant to where it's just, I live in Malaysia and I just have my expat friends. I like to be constantly on the move and meeting people from different places. To me, that's really exciting. And I think also it's nice to have a mix of places that are very expat friendly, i.e. Kuala Lumpur, and also places where you can just kind of kick back and relax, like a Montenegro, for example. I spend summers there. That's a pretty local crowd in many places, some Russian, something like that. But I think that mix is nice. I think keeping things moving is nice.
I know that you speak English, Spanish, and Russian, and then your staff covers French, Italian, Arabic, and Serbian. But do you work with clients that speak languages other than English?
We had one Chinese guy not so long ago who was referred to us by a very nice person who was a fantastic guy, so we accepted him. But what I found that fascinates me, because I'm not a lawyer or accountant, because I'm a doer, I'm fascinated by the human element of this. And even studying my own family, why have they talked for so long about moving overseas but never did it? Most people talk. And I like to analyze, why is that? Why is it people don't do? And one of the things that I've really learned is mentorship is helpful. I generally work with people US, Australia, Canada, UK, that realm, because I understand it. And it's easy to help somebody. Even, occasionally we'll take someone who's from France, and even then, we're pretty similar backgrounds, from the US to France, the scheme of things. But even then, it's like, we're not totally on the same page. You look at continental Europe, they do things a bit differently than the Anglo world does. And so, I don't know what it's like to be an Indian guy who has a really bad passport, and it's an entirely different background. An entirely different culture, by the way, in the way they do business, what they expect, the pacing, not good or bad, but what I've really found is having that mentorship, and to that point, being able to speak the same kind of, like, we get each other. So I think that's really important.
Well, you've got a rather large YouTube channel, a big following. What's the channel focused on?
I look at YouTube as putting together a master class for all the things that I think are important, all the opportunities I see, but really more importantly, what is it that people don't know about going offshore? And so again, my focus is kind of three areas. There's the financial element, which is saving money on tax, protecting your money, diversifying your finances. There's the residence and citizenship and lifestyle part, and then there's the investment part and growing your money. So you save the money and you protect it in the first hand, then you create a lifestyle that supports that and you enjoy, and then you invest all the money you're saving. So I talk about all that stuff, but what's funny is those three things all have to work together. You might have investments that totally screw up your tax plan if you don't know what you're doing. You might have a citizenship that affects, where your company should be. And so I'm trying to cover some fun stuff. I'm trying to cover, we just did cheapest places in the world to buy real estate. I'm going to do some videos this summer on buying land in Europe and just really cheap land deals and houses I'm buying and stuff like that. But it's also, hey guys, here are some common mistakes that I'm seeing, because people are coming to me and they are confused. People don't understand the difference between a visa and a residence permit and a citizenship. And if you don't understand that, that can have catastrophic results, or at least it can set you up for failure if you don't get that fixed. And so I'm trying to teach a master class to where everybody really understands how this stuff really works, what's really possible. There's a lot of great opportunities, but you have to be careful. And also, the new modern perspective. This is not 1975. This is not the Wolf of Wall Street hiding money in Swiss banks anymore. I think as this market grows, as we popularize this, you're going to find people who get all their information on offshore from crime shows on TV. And so I'm really trying to correct and say, here's how it really works.
The idea of becoming a digital nomad is growing, and we've seen the launch of the first digital nomad visa in Estonia at the beginning of 2019. Where do you see the future of digital nomads, and how can your business help?
Well, I think that what you're going to see is a couple things. Number one, you're going to see an increasing pool and an increasing niching out of the digital nomad communities. What I see with people, generally we work with people who make anywhere from $300,000 a year up to many millions of dollars a year. People who have, just starting out in business, making good incomes, to just had someone who sold a company for $100 million. So we cover that spectrum. The guy who has $100 million does not want to go and live in Chiang Mai, Thailand. He wants to find a place, maybe he's got kids and he wants to homeschool them, and he wants to spend half his time in Singapore and part of his time in London, and he wants a summer beach place, in Montenegro or in Greece or Turkey or whatever. And so I think that's going to be a big concept. I really think that you're going to see a lot of diversity. I think that as Tier B passports, as I call them, people who are from countries like Serbia, where my staff are, that's a passport where you can't go to the United States, generally is how I define it. more of those people are entering the digital nomad scene. So whereas up until not so long ago, it was basically just like Americans and Europeans and Australians, I think you can see more countries getting in it, more diversity. And I think that we're really going to start to see which countries are open for business and which aren't. And what I've said for a long time is you've got a lot of countries that are running on fumes. A lot of countries that are still popular because they were marketed well in the 1960s. Here in Singapore, this place was not doing so great in the 1960s. It was not the hotbed it is now. And so even in my lifetime, even in your lifetime, I mean, the world has changed. Places that we wouldn't have wanted to be born in the 1980s are now incredibly livable. And so I think we're going to see some amazing transformations with countries like Estonia, countries like Georgia that are open for business, and many others. And we're going to start to see some of the fault lines in countries like the US that have not really been very easy to deal with.
Right. Well, in a rapid fire way, could you give our audience the best countries to set up foreign-based companies?
If there's anything offshore, it depends. I'll say where I wouldn't go. I think that these islands are increasingly unpopular. I'm looking for what I would call mid-shore. Onshore is the new offshore. Find a low tax or zero tax place, a place with an exception, a tax holiday, whatever. I would not be setting up in the Seychelles, for example.
Okay. What countries do you predict will be good foreign real estate investments in the next 5 to 25 years?
25 years is a long time.
Right.
It is an interesting thing where I'm looking at where can I buy a real estate on a total crapshoot. I mean, Iran or something. Rwanda. I mean, really, I think Rwanda actually could be one where 50 years from now it could be something, or maybe not. You got to do 10 of them and 3 will play out. I'm a big fan of Georgia. I'm a big fan of Cambodia. I'm a big fan of Colombia. Those are probably 3 that I like a lot.
Awesome. Do you have any other advice you'd like to share?
I think being honest with yourself is really important. People ask me all the time, can I live the nomad capitalist lifestyle staying where I'm at? Yes, with not all the benefits. If you want to save money on tax, the easiest thing to do is to move somewhere that charges you less tax or no tax. But what I encourage people to do, I wrote a book called Nomad Capitalist where I lay out all the different things you can do. I would say go out and figure out one small thing you can do. Like come to Singapore, open a bank account. It's a lot harder than it was when I first started, but open a bank account. Go to Georgia, open a bank account, and see how you feel. And be honest with yourself. Am I willing to move overseas to save on tax? Am I willing to make investments? Everyone, wants to talk a big game, especially as guys, right? We want to talk a big game, but figure out what you're really willing to do, and then do that. And I think that the more you do, the more you'll build. So just real quick, I bought my first property in Georgia. I had to take $22,000 in cash out of the bank and walk down the street, and that was scary. I remember telling the lawyer, like, what if I get robbed? Andrew, this is no problem. There's the other lawyer. He is my friend. If you get robbed, he will go, Rapsa, and this guy will be gone. No problem. And that was scary. But, you do that once. Now it's like, you wire 300 grand to someone, 500 grand. It's not a big deal. So I think doing begets more doing. You get more and more comfortable. But as you go, you have to be honest with yourself. If you don't want to leave your country, figure out what the other opportunities are. If you're not comfortable investing, figure out what else you can do.
Andrew, this has been so awesome. If people want to know more about you or your company, how can they find you?
So nomadcapitalist.com, we've got about 1,500 and counting blog articles. Of course, on YouTube you can find us. If you're looking to be helped by our team, nomadcapitalist.com. The big thing I would tell everybody is if you find the book, Nomad Capitalist, on Amazon, it's a great kind of 270-some page primer that gets you kind of introduced to all the concepts, so that way you can go forth and figure out what you want to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for meeting with Expats Everywhere.
My pleasure.